Hello, thank you for listening in today. My name is Danielle Dagenet. I'm one of the regional coordinators for the BC Community Bat Program, and I'll be talking to you about living with bats. When we think about bats living in buildings, we often think about bats in the belfry or bats in people's attic. It's true that these are common places to find bats. When bats live inside a building, we need to ensure that the living space or workspace is sealed off. When the bat colony is separated from human spaces, there is little or no concerns about living with bats. In fact, many families live with bats throughout BC. Some people even live with bats for years before they become aware of them. Take, for example, the famous Peachland roost. Bats were discovered in the attic of this heritage building and were thought to have been there for 10 to 15 years before people became aware of their existence. Although most people associate bats with living inside structures, bats may roost throughout a property. In fact, in my region, most roosts are located on the exterior of a building. Some common locations include under soffits and eaves, under fascia board or siding, behind shutters, under corrugated aluminum roofs, or under roof tiles. We call these locations bat roosts and not nests, as bats do not build anything or carry material into the home. They are simply looking for a space to hang out and a location where they can rest safely. There are 17 species of bats in British Columbia. The 13 represented on this slide have the potential to use buildings. However, from our monitoring records, the most common species to use buildings include little brown bat, California myotis, big brown bat, Yuma myotis, and the Townsend's big-eared bat. One or more bats may roost on your property throughout the year. However, we generally associate bats using buildings with maternity colonies. Females seek out roosts in the summer to raise their young. Buildings provide great roost locations and can be very important habitat for bats. Buildings provide bats with a safe, secure location away from predators and inclement weather. Depending on the location of the roost, buildings may also provide bats with a more stable roosting environment than a natural roost such as a tree, which would decrease their need and frequency to switch roosts, allowing females to save energy. Colonies of bats using buildings throughout the summer are the females. They typically move into buildings in May, give birth in June, and rear pups to independence by August. During this time, May to August, bats are protected by the Wildlife Act. One of the reasons for this protection is that most of our Canadian bat species only have one pup per year. It is therefore critical that they have a safe place to rear their pups to independence to help sustain their population. Pups are born naked and unable to fly for 4 to 6 weeks. Any disturbance to a reproductive female can cause her to abandon her young and result in its death. Other reasons for their protection is that bats are very valuable and important wildlife. They play a key role in our ecosystem by consuming vast numbers of insects each night, which include pests of humans, crops, and forests. Furthermore, many bat populations are declining due to several threats. It is very important to protect our bat species so we do not lose the services that they provide to us. As bats in urban and rural environments will seek out building roosts, it's important that people learn about bats. Many people have no or little knowledge of bats and are squeamish about having bats in their home. This is brought on by myths that cause fear and misunderstanding. Homeowners want to protect themselves and loved ones and have a fear that bats will attack or cause harm to children or pets. Bats are present in most regions, but they generally keep to themselves. They will not attack unless provoked or sick. Bat encounters are rare. If you find a live or dead bat on your property, the BC Community Bat Program is there to provide you with guidance. There is no need to panic. The situation can be handled. Cats are a main predator of bats and are a cause of many encounters. They often bring their catch home to the homeowners to deal with. Under no circumstances should you handle a bat with your bare hands. The reason for this is rabies. Although bats can carry this virus, the risk is very low. Any direct contact with a bat should be reported immediately to the health authority. Recently, there is also fear that bats carry numerous diseases and have caused COVID. There is no evidence that bats have caused the pandemic, and bats are not ridden with diseases. The only concern in BC is rabies. Aaron Fraser from the BC CDC will discuss bats and diseases in tomorrow's presentation. The last misunderstanding I'd like to talk to you about is the fear that bats will damage your home. Guano is often thought to be very toxic and full of diseases, and homeowners express great concern when guano falls onto doorsteps or patio. Guano is not toxic. In fact, it makes a great fertilizer. There are no risks associated with it in British Columbia. Furthermore, as bats are simply seeking a place to hang out in, they will not chew your home or cause extensive damage to the structure. When bats use a building, you must consider guano management. Guano is a term given to bat droppings. It often is mistaken for rodent feces due to its appearance, but will crumble to a fine powder when applied with a bit of pressure. When bats are roosted on the exterior of a building, guano will accumulate along walls or on lower surfaces. Guano management can be as simple as taking a few minutes to sweep up the area. Depending on the size of the colony and its location, you may consider installing a ledge or placing potted plants below the roost to intercept the guano. When guano accumulates along a wall, we ask that you wait until the end of the season to wash it away as to not disturb any roosting bats. To prevent a smell that can occur when guano falls in a corner, do not allow it to pile up. Simple maintenance of an external roost has no or little cost and minimal effort when kept up. When bats roost inside a building, guano management must be carefully considered and a plan must be developed. Guano removal should be done when bats are not in the roost. Tarps, plastic sheeting, and wood can be laid over blown insulation or studs, and in barns, for example, tarps can be hung to intercept guano falling on livestock or hay. Once a plan is in place, guano can be safely and easily removed every 1 to 2 years. For example, in Peachland, where 2,000 bats live in the attic, it only takes a small crew of volunteers a few hours each year to remove the guano. We recommend removing the guano when it is dry. It can be swept up, vacuumed up with a dry vac, or material laid on the ground can simply be rolled out and tossed out a window. We also recommend that you wear disposable coveralls, N95 masks, and gloves, as well as spray the area down with a 10% bleach solution to minimize the dust, and as a precaution, as the guano can be mixed with rodent feces. Please note that although there may be a strong smell in the attic, the smell will not carry into the home if the roost is properly sealed off. Maintenance and costs of an internal roost may be high up front to set it up, but efforts is greatly reduced over time. When bats live in buildings, we must manage the concerns to allow the homeowners and the bats to live together. For those people that do not wish to have bats living in their building for extended periods of time, there are several documents on our webpage that you can refer to about exclusions. I'd like to stress again that bats are protected from May to August, and so any exclusion work must be done outside this window. We also have a document on our website that highlights people and businesses that live with bats in British Columbia. It talks about the history of the colonies and the maintenance and costs associated with each of the bat roosts. If you have bats in your home and you are unsure about allowing them to stay, please read this document and contact the program to discuss your situation. If you plan to exclude bats, we ask that you monitor the bats before and after the exclusion. This will let you know how many bats you're dealing with, where they are coming in and out of, and if your exclusion was successful. It can also provide important information on habitat mitigation if you plan to install alternate habitats such as a bat box in conjunction with the exclusion. Bat boxes have been successful at getting bats out of buildings, but it is important to note that they do not provide the same type of roosting environment as a building, and that more than one box is recommended to support the colony throughout the summer despite the colony size. To learn more about bat boxes, download Corey Larson's talk on Wednesday. When bats are roosted on the exterior of the home, it is common for homeowners to wish to exclude bats as they do not want to deal with the guano at doorsteps, on patios, or on window ledges. In these circumstances, we ask that you consider a partial exclusion and allow the bats to roost above a bare wall or garden space where guano is not as noticeable and can be easily washed away at the end of the summer. When excluding bats, please consider how long the bats have been using the structure. Bats are creatures of habit and may not take well to an eviction. If bats have been using the structure for several years, exclusion or demolition of a roost may have negative impacts on the population. Although alternate habitat or natural habitat may be available, the bats may not seek it out. They could forego pregnancy or die with the loss of a long-term roost. We need to ensure the appropriate management of roosts for the survival and successful rearing of young to maintain our bat populations, especially for those species that have come to rely on structures. Again, we tend to associate bats in buildings with female colonies in the summertime. However, bats can be found throughout the year using buildings. Let's talk about other types of bat roosts. Single roosting bats are very common on property. This may include a bat in transition moving from the summer roost site to a hibernaculum in the spring or fall, or may include an adult male bat or a newly independent pup in the summer. Common roost locations for a single roosting bat includes on a wall, above a doorway, in or on a patio umbrella, under a hot tub cover, inside awnings, in a tree, or even on a fence. In the winter time, bats, especially in the lower mainland, may be hibernating in your woodpile. Small colonies of bats may also use vacant buildings in the winter, and on occasion, bats have been reported hibernating in basements. Whether you have a maternity colony, have noticed a single roosting bat on your property, or have excluded bats, you have bats in your area. Any bat activity has the potential for a bat encounter. Please be aware of the bat activity in your neighborhood and take precautions to minimize these. Please pause the slide and read how you can minimize encounters to protect your family, pets, and friends. Before concluding, I'd like to talk to you about ways you can protect bats on your property. Please take notes of hazards that may be present adjacent to or inside the roost. Please aim security lights away from the roost. Despite the myth that bats are blind, they do have good vision and their eyes are sensitive to bright lights. Avoid the use of sticky tape or glue traps that bats may fly into. On occasion, a bat may fall from the roost. We want to ensure that they do not fall onto a slippery surface or inside a container they cannot crawl out of. Bats cannot crawl if they cannot grip onto the surface. Bats must also be able to climb up a few feet in order to take flight. If you have installed a bat box on your property, please maintain and monitor it every year and ensure tree branches and other obstacles do not encroach the opening. Lastly, if you have fresh water source on your property, please keep the water levels high or provide a wildlife escape ramp to prevent drowning. Bats are very secretive animals by nature. We rarely see them as they keep to themselves and are active when most people are indoors. Their behavior allows them to go unnoticed by many. Bats should not be feared, but treasured. Bats are more common than most people believe and are found throughout cities. They should be encouraged to live among us. They are not dangerous animals. People living with bats have little concerns. Bats provide us with very important services by consuming nocturnal insects and should be respected. Thank you for taking the time to listen to my presentation today. Please add any questions or comments to the presentation page of our conference website.